I never thought I'd find myself in a situation like this. Honestly, I thought I knew everything about Julia, my wife. We'd been together for 5 years and everything seemed perfect on the surface. She was the kind of girl everyone admired. Smart, beautiful, confident, a little bitchy sometimes, but that was just her attitude. We were planning our wedding, everything was supposed to be perfect. Or so I thought. Looking back, there were little signs I ignored. The late nights she'd sometimes claim were work emergencies or urgent meetings. The odd texts she'd hide on her phone, always quick to swipe away if I caught her glancing at it. I'd catch her texting in secret, but she'd just brush it off with some snarky comment about how I was paranoid or insecure. She'd say, "Relax, I'm just talking to my sister," even when her phone lit up with some guy's name I didn't recognize. I shrugged it off, convinced I was overthinking it. But the biggest sign that something was off, her sudden change in behavior in the last few weeks before our wedding. She was more distant, snapping at me for small things, acting like I was just an obstacle to her happiness. It was like she was already checked out emotionally. I'd ask her what was wrong, and she'd roll her eyes or give me some sarcastic reply like, "Oh, I don't know, maybe I'm just stressed out." Or maybe I don't want to get married to a guy who's so paranoid about everything. That last part stung. Still, I convinced myself she was just stressed, that maybe she was just overwhelmed with all the wedding planning. Then came the evening that changed everything. It was a family dinner, just the usual Sunday gathering. We were sitting around the table with her parents, my parents, some cousins. I was feeling good, maybe a little proud of how far we'd come until I saw her phone. She always kept it close, but this time she was fidgeting with it nervously, like she was hiding something. I caught her slipping her phone into her purse just as she was about to get up from the table. Something made me pause. As the night went on, I couldn't shake this weird feeling. I kept stealing glances at her phone, and that's when I saw it. The message thread, it was right there, open in her notifications. I was too stunned to say anything at first. I stared at the screen in disbelief, reading texts that made my blood run cold. It was her, Julia, talking intimately with her coworker, Mark. The kind of messages that clearly weren't just friendly. Flirty, suggestive, even explicitly about sex. I saw her saying things like, "Can't wait to see you tonight," and "I've been thinking about what we did last time," and even one that said, "Don't tell anyone, I want it to be our little secret." I couldn't believe it. My wife, the woman I loved, was cheating on me with my best friend, and I'd missed all the signs, all the subtle hints, all the warnings I'd ignored. How blind had I been? I felt sick, like I'd been punched in the gut. My stomach twisted and my head spun. I wanted to scream, to shout, but all I could do was sit there quietly, pretending to be interested in whatever her mother was saying, while my mind was racing. How could she do this? How could she lie so easily? That bitchy, confident exterior she always showed was just a mask. Inside, she was a liar, a cheat, a manipulator, and I was supposed to marry her in just a few weeks. I felt like the ground had shifted beneath me and I didn't know how to stand up again. After I saw those messages, everything changed. The room suddenly felt too small, too suffocating. My mind was racing, trying to process what I'd just discovered in the blink of an eye. I kept glancing at her, waiting for her to notice I'd seen something. She was oblivious, still chatting with her cousin about some trivial thing, that smug smile on her face like she had everything under control. But I knew better. I knew my world was crumbling. I excused myself from the table, claiming I needed to get some air. Once outside, I leaned against the porch railing, trying to breathe, trying to think clearly. My heart was pounding so loud I was afraid it would give me away. I stared into the darkness, feeling a mixture of rage, betrayal, and disbelief. How could she lie so effortlessly? How could she keep this secret for so long? It was like I'd been living in some kind of nightmare, except I was wide awake and every second felt like torture. I couldn't hold it in anymore. I knew I had to confront her, but I also knew I had to be smart. I didn't want her to spin some bullshit story or lie her way out of this. So I waited until she finished her glass of wine and excused herself to the bathroom. That's when I snuck into her purse, digging through her stuff like a detective. I didn't care about privacy anymore. I just needed the truth. The moment I found her phone, I almost hesitated. What if she caught me? But I had no choice. I unlocked it with a passcode I'd memorized earlier, probably during one of her stressful nights when she was unusually distracted. The messages I'd seen earlier only scratched the surface. There were dozens more, a trail of lies and secret rendezvous, all hidden behind her busy facade. I scrolled through, reading every message, every flirtatious joke, every promise she'd made to Mark about how she'd never leave me, how she'd never cheat, all the while planning her betrayal. I felt like I'd been punched again. It was worse reading the messages in context, seeing how she'd convinced herself she was so clever, hiding everything from me. They even talked about meeting after work in hotels, at her apartment, places where I'd never been invited. Every word she'd written made my stomach turn. I saw her say things like, "If he ever finds out, I'll deny everything," and "Don't worry, I'm careful. He's too stupid to notice." I couldn't believe my ears or my eyes. I'd always trusted her, always believed I was the only one she cared about. How stupid I'd been for so long. When she finally came out of the bathroom, I was still there, pretending to be indifferent, but inside I was boiling. She looked at me like nothing had happened, like I was just another clueless idiot. Her smile, which I'd always thought was charming, suddenly seemed sinister. I wanted to explode, to scream at her, to tear her apart. But I kept my cool, knowing I had to be smart about this. I told her I was going for a walk, left the house, and headed straight to the car. That drive home was the worst. I wasn't sure if I was more angry, more hurt, or just completely numb. I kept replaying everything I'd seen, every lie she'd told me, every moment she'd been with Mark. How long had this been going on? Was I just blind? Did I mean nothing to her? The worst part was realizing how much I'd trusted her, how much I'd loved her, only to find out she'd been screwing my best friend behind my back for months, probably longer. When I got home, I didn't want to face her. I just stood outside, looking at the house, feeling like a fool. The betrayal hit me like a ton of bricks, but what hurt even more was the realization that I had missed all the signs. The late nights, the secretive texts, her cold attitude. All of it was right there, right in front of me. I just didn't see it. Or maybe I refused to see it because I didn't want to believe the girl I loved could do something so cruel. Now I was left with nothing but the wreckage of everything I thought was real. And I had no idea what to do next. The next few days were a blur. I could eat, couldn't sleep. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw her face, the fake smile she put on when she lied, the messages I'd read, the betrayal that cut so deep I thought I'd never recover. I kept asking myself, how did I miss all the signs? How did I let things get so out of control? The worst part was knowing she had lied straight to my face, that she'd been hiding this huge secret, secretly planning her escape with Mark while she pretended to be the perfect fiancé. I tried to talk to her, of course. I called her after work, sent her texts, even showed up at her office one day. Every time she'd put on that arrogant, bitchy attitude. "What's your problem, Jason?" She'd snap, rolling her eyes. "I'm just busy, you're overreacting." Or she'd laugh it off, saying I was paranoid, that I was just jealous of her success at work, that she'd never cheat on me. She'd swear she loved me, that she'd never do anything to hurt me, but I knew better. I knew she was lying. I had proof now. The thing is, Julia isn't just a cheater, she's a master manipulator. She can lie with a straight face, pretend she's innocent, make you doubt yourself. She accused me of snooping, of invading her privacy, as if her secret messages were some innocent joke. She'd say, "You're crazy, Jason, you're just insecure. Why do you keep accusing me of stuff I didn't do?" But I wasn't crazy. I knew the truth, and I knew she was lying her ass off. One night I finally snapped. I was sitting in my apartment, feeling like I was losing my mind. That's when I decided I needed to confront her face to face. No more hiding, no more pretending. I didn't want to be the guy who got played, especially not by my wife-to-be and my best friend. So I called Mark. I didn't bother to be polite. I told him that I knew everything and I wanted to meet. His excuse was lame, some bullshit about not wanting drama, but I didn't care. I told him if he showed up, I'd make sure he regretted it. He showed up the next evening, nervous but cocky. When I saw him, I didn't hold back. I told him I knew about their affair, how I'd seen the messages, how long it had been going on. I demanded he tell me why. He hesitated at first, trying to deny it, but I had enough proof. I pulled out my phone, showed him the texts, the photos I'd taken when I first found the messages. His face turned pale and he stammered, trying to come up with some bullshit excuse about how Julia was just lonely or it wasn't serious. I cut him off, telling him I'd never want a friend like him, someone who'd betray his best friend like that. I told him I'd never forgive him, and I never wanted to see his face again. That night, I felt a strange mixture of relief and emptiness. Confronting them both had been necessary, but it didn't erase the pain. It just made everything more real. Julia still acted like nothing had happened, like I was overreacting. She shrugged it off, called me insecure, said I was just jealous of her success. But I saw through her bullshit now. I saw her for what she really was, a selfish, manipulative bitch who thought she could get away with murder. I knew then I had to make a choice. I realized that I couldn't stay with her, not after everything. I couldn't trust her anymore, and I didn't want to be with someone who could cheat on me with my best friend, lie so convincingly, and then turn around and act like I was the crazy one. I had to think about myself now. I had to decide whether to walk away and start over or try to fight for something that was already broken beyond repair. Honestly, I felt shattered. Like every hope I'd had for my future was just ripped apart in that moment. I knew that whatever I chose, my life would never be the same. In the days that followed, I felt like I was walking around in a daze. The house where Julia and I were supposed to start our life together now felt like a prison. Everything reminded me of her. Her perfume still lingered in the air. Her favorite mug sat on the kitchen counter, untouched. I couldn't bring myself to touch it. My mind kept replaying that night, that confrontation, and the sickening realization that the woman I loved had been lying to me for months, possibly longer. I started to think about revenge, not in a childish way, but in a way that would make her feel some of what I was going through. How dare she betray me like that? How dare she lie and manipulate her way into my life, only to stab me in the back? I clenched my fists, feeling the anger rising again. I knew I couldn't just let this go. I wanted her to feel the pain she'd caused me, to see her face when she realized I was no longer the naive fool she thought I was. I began to hatch a plan. It wasn't just about hurting her. It was about making her understand that her actions had consequences. She thought she was so clever, so untouchable. But I was going to show her she wasn't invincible. I started gathering evidence, screenshots of her messages, her secret contacts, even recordings of her when she'd tried to deny everything. I wanted her to see that I wasn't going to be a pushover anymore. I'd become the hunter, not the hunted. One idea that kept circling in my mind was to expose her publicly. Not in some malicious way, but enough to make her realize that her lies and schemes wouldn't stay hidden forever. I wanted her to feel exposed, vulnerable, just as she'd made me feel. I researched how to do it discreetly, how to leak her secrets without it blowing up in my face. I knew she'd probably scream and lie her way out of it, but I didn't care. She needed to understand that cheating and lying have consequences, especially when she thought she was so above everyone else. But I also knew any confrontation would be dangerous. Julia wasn't just a bitch, she was manipulative and vindictive. If she caught wind that I was planning something, she could turn it around on me. She was good at twisting situations, making herself the victim. I had to be careful. I couldn't just storm in and accuse her of everything. That would only make her defensive, and I'd lose any chance at getting the truth out. No, I had to be patient, calculated. I had to play her game, but on my terms. Meanwhile, I started to distance myself emotionally. The more I thought about her deception, the more I realized I'd been caught up in a fantasy, a girl who was fun, confident and a little bitchy, but who was also capable of this kind of betrayal. I began to understand that I had to rebuild my life from the ground up. I couldn't trust her anymore, not in any way. That realization was both liberating and devastating at the same time. One night, I sat alone in my apartment, staring at the ceiling. I knew the decision was coming, whether I would try to fix this or walk away for good. I had to accept that Julia was no longer the woman I thought I knew. She was a liar, a cheat, a manipulator. The thought of her with Mark planning their secret rendezvous made my stomach turn again. I wondered how I'd ever been so blind, how I'd missed all the signs, all the subtle hints. I kept asking myself if I could forgive her, if there was any way back from this, but deep down I knew the answer was no. Once trust is broken like this, it's impossible to repair. So I decided I'd do what I had to do, not just for myself, but for my dignity. I might be hurt now, but someday I'd come out of this stronger. I'd learn to trust again, maybe even find someone who actually deserved me. Julia had shown me who she really was, and I wasn't going to be the fool she thought I was anymore. I was done playing her game. From this moment on, I was taking back control. The decision to end things with Julia was not easy, but it was necessary. I knew I couldn't stay in a relationship built on lies and betrayal. I didn't want to be the guy who turns into some pathetic rebound, but I also couldn't keep living with the guilt, the anger, and the heartbreak. I realized that I needed to make her see that her actions had consequences, that I wasn't going to be some doormat anymore. So, I started planning my next move carefully. My first step was to gather even more evidence. I wanted her to understand that I knew everything. The secret messages, the rendezvous, the lies she told to her friends about how perfect our relationship was. I made copies of everything, saved screenshots, recorded her calls when I could. I wanted her to realize that I was serious, that I wasn't going to disappear quietly into the night like some sucker who got played. I make sure she felt the sting of her own deception and that she regretted ever crossing me. I knew her pride was huge and that she loved to control the narrative. So I decided I'd do my own version of exposing her, but in a way that hit her where it hurt. I started dropping hints on social media, posting cryptic messages about betrayal and lies, nothing overt, but enough for people to start questioning her. I knew she'd see it, and I knew her pride would make her furious. I wanted her to feel exposed, vulnerable, that she'd been caught in her own web of deceit. One afternoon, I confronted her directly. I emailed her, telling her I knew everything. I didn't hold back. I laid out all the evidence I had, told her I was done, and that I wanted her to leave. I told her I didn't want to see her face again, that I wanted a clean break. Her reply was classic Julia, full of lies, denial, and accusations. She called me crazy, told me I was stalking her, that I was insecure. She even had the audacity to say I was jealous of Mark, but I wasn't about to let her spin her stories anymore. I sent her all the proof I had, and I told her I'd see her in court if I had to. That was the turning point. The moment she realized I wasn't going to be some pushover. She started to panic a little, tried to reach out, but I blocked her everywhere. I wanted her to feel what I was feeling, betrayed, exposed, powerless. It was about making her see that her lies had consequences, that she couldn't just cheat and lie her way through life. I wasn't going to let her get away with it, not anymore. Meanwhile, I focused on rebuilding myself. I started going to the gym, working on my career, reconnecting with friends I'd distanced myself from. I realized I'd wasted too much time on her, on trying to fix something that was already broken beyond repair. I poured my energy into healing, into creating a life where I could trust again, where I could be happy without pretending everything was okay. It hurt, but I knew it was the only way forward. I also reached out to a counselor. I needed help processing all of this, understanding how I'd let her manipulate me for so long, how to forgive myself for missing all the signs. It was humbling, admitting I'd been blind, but it was necessary. No matter how much I hated her, I had to find a way to forgive and let go. That was the only way I could truly move on. Looking back, I realize I learned a lot from this disaster. I learned that betrayal cuts deeper than I thought, and that you can't always see the signs when you're blind with love. But I also learned that I'm stronger than I believed, that I can survive even the worst betrayals. It's a long road and I'm still healing, but I know now that I deserve better. I deserve someone who's honest, trustworthy, and loyal. Julia was never that girl, and I'm finally starting to see that. Now I won't sugarcoat it. The pain from all this still lingers. Sometimes, late at night, I catch myself thinking about her, about what could have been if she had been honest. But then I remember the lies, the secret messages, the plans she made behind my back. I remind myself that I deserve someone who respects me, who doesn't cheat and lie and manipulate just to get what she wants. That realization has been both a bitter pill and a kind of liberation. I've come to see this betrayal as a brutal lesson. It taught me to listen more carefully, to trust my instincts, and most importantly, to value myself enough not to accept lies and betrayal from anyone, no matter how convincing they seem. I've learned that the signs are always there, hidden beneath layers of charm and confidence, waiting to be uncovered. That if I'd paid attention earlier, maybe I wouldn't be here now, feeling so broken and angry. But I also understand now that it's not just about revenge or punishment. It's about healing and moving forward. I've started to rebuild my life, slowly, painfully, but surely. I've realized that holding onto anger only keeps me stuck in the past. Forgiving her isn't about saying what she did was okay. It's about freeing myself from the poison of resentment. I want to be happy again, even if that happiness means being alone for a while. Looking back, I see what a fool I was for trusting so blindly. I see how her words, her lies, and her manipulations kept me off balance. But I also see how strong I am now, how I've fought through the worst of it. The scars are still there, but they don't define me. I'm learning to accept that sometimes, no matter how much you love someone, they can still betray you in ways you never imagined. And you know what? I'm grateful for the lessons, because now I know better. I know that I deserve honesty and loyalty. I know that I'm capable of surviving even the deepest wounds. And I know that someday, I'll find someone who values me as much as I value her, someone who won't lie, cheat, or lie to hide her own mistakes. So to anyone out there who's going through something similar, here's what I want you to remember. Never ignore the signs. Trust yourself. And most importantly, don't let anyone, no matter how perfect they seem, take away your dignity. Because in the end, your worth isn't defined by someone else's lies or betrayal. It's built on how you pick yourself up after falling, how you rebuild your life, and how you choose to move forward. I may have been betrayed, but I'm still standing, and I will be stronger because of it.